the fifth webinar for the EU Datathon 2020, the Open Data Competition. I'm going to introduce myself. My name is Inmaculada Farfán Velasco, and I'm working in the EU Open Data Portal in the Publications Office of the European Union. And I'm going to guide you through this webinar in order to present the data and the data sets that you can use for this competition. And I will also show you the different different rules and the different steps that you have to follow in case you want to participate. So in this webinar's presentation, in this fifth webinar, we will have three speakers. The first of them will be the European Parliament for the Challenge 3, a new push for European democracy. The second one, the European Commission, the Directorate-General for Internal Market, Industry, Entrepreneurship and SMEs for the Challenge 4, a Europe fit for the digital age. And then to finish, we'll have our colleague from the European Patent Office for Challenge 4 for a Europe fit for the digital age. Then once this webinar is ready, you will have everything available in the website together with a presentation from Eurostat for the Challenge 4, a Europe fit for the digital age. So why is the EU Datathon 2020 about? So as I was saying before, it's the Open Data Competition, it's its 4th edition, and in case you're interested, there are so many benefits out of this. So basically, it's your opportunity to show your creativity and talent, demonstrating as well the potential of open data, because this competition its aim is to promote the reuse of open data from the EU institutions, member states, and so on. You also, with this, with your applications and your proposals and your ideas, you can help Europe to achieve important goals set by the European Commission. And also, you can claim your share of the total prize fund amounting to 100,000 euros. So then, now that I cut a little bit your attention, how can you participate? So if you're an individual from all over the world, because this is a worldwide competition and you're interested to apply for this, you can create a team up to 4 people, and you can apply to every challenge you want. You cannot submit several proposals per challenge, but you can submit for all of them. So you can choose the challenge that fits you best for what you want to develop your ideas on. So we have the Challenge 1, European Green Deal, we have the Challenge 2, an economy that works for people, we have the Challenge 3, a new push for European democracy, and Challenge 4, a Europe fit for the digital age. So then we launched the competition the 19th of February of 2020, this year, and then now we're waiting for your proposals, for your ideas, and the deadline to submit your proposals is the 3rd of May, so it's closed. So please don't submit your proposal before this date, and then we will see your different proposals and your ideas in these terms. So once you submit your proposal, what happens? So then, if you are shortlisted, you will be invited to develop your proposal and to create this kind of an application. And you will have the opportunity to present this application in the 15th European Week of Regions and Cities in Brussels. It will be a conference that hosts more than 9,000 people per year. And on the 13th and 14th, you will have a stand where you will show the outcomes of your work within these months. And you'll have the opportunity to network and show all the ideas you've been developing within these months. And then on the 15th, you will have the final competition where you will participate with other shortlisted teams. So, what are the prizes? So the final ranking of the winning teams for each challenge will be decided at this event on the 15th of October. And the teams will be awarded for the following process for each challenge. So the first place will get 12,000 euros, the second place 8,000 euros, and the third place 5,000 euros. So then, what is the purpose of this webinar? Then, so we want to help as much as possible to develop your application. So the purpose of this webinar are to help participants to better understand the data of the different EU institutions, agencies, bodies, and so on. to use them for these challenges. They try to help you to know where to find information and which tools you can use. And also, they help you to get the best out of it. So in case you want to have more information about how to apply for this competition, what are the rules, what should I do with this data and so on, please check the rules of our website. And don't forget to submit your proposal before the 3rd of May. So then, on this webinar, we will focus on two different challenges, the 3 and the 4. The third one is a new push for European democracy. So you have to develop new ways to empower citizens and businesses to tackle societal challenges by using open data to improve transparency, fight disinformation, protect elections, foster citizens' engagement, and make the voices of the EU people heard. So this is what my colleagues from the European Parliament are going to present for. And then we will have for Challenge 4 a Europe fit for the digital age. So the participants who will come with a proposal for this challenge, they have to propose apps or services to support European digital transformation by improving data skills and making data more understandable for everyone. So, so this is what the planning of today. So now I'm going to, So in case you want more, you can also find us on Twitter in these two users we have, and also with these tags. And of course, if you have any questions, we're here to help you and to support you as much as we can. So you can directly write us to our functional mailbox. So then, before giving the floor to my colleagues, this webinar will be recorded and it will be published on the website. Please mute yourself, and then something else is that in WebEx you will have the opportunity to you have the chat box, so please feel free to write there your comments or your questions, and then after each presentation I will ask to our colleagues to answer these questions. So in this way we will try to make sure that all the questions are answered. So we'll start the webinar now. So we'll start with the European Parliament. So Sommer, the floor is yours. You can start whenever you want.
Thank you very much, Inma. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm now going to share my screen and hope that this is going to work the way I planned. Inma will tell me if you see it, right?
Yes. It's loading.
It's there?
Yes, it's there.
It's too fast.
Perfect.
So, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you, Inma, again. Indeed, my name is Reid Sommer. I'm here with my colleague Laura Ljutinovic-Schulte. We both work for the European Parliament. And we are here today to present the data we currently have, both in the EU Open Data Portal as well as on our own website. And all this then in the context of the Challenge 3, a new push for European democracy. The different points I would go through over the next 10 minutes, probably 10-15 minutes, give you a little overview of the European Parliament, then show the nature of our data sets, where they are, which formats they are, and then maybe show, at least mention a couple of examples of applications or websites who are currently already using EP data. So I guess that most of you have heard about the European Parliament. Nevertheless, we try to make a slide here to also show some numbers to make a link to the Datathon. So the European Parliament is the legislative branch of the European Union. It's acting as a co-legislator, sharing with Council the power to adopt and amend legislative proposals, which are then mainly coming from the European Commission. We have the members of the European Parliament. They are directly elected by voters in all member states, and currently there are 705 members. They are organized to work in 7 political groups. We are led by a president, and having 14 vice presidents. So the last last European elections, they took place in May 2019. So currently we are in I've started the 9th parliamentary term, and here below a couple of numbers from the 8th parliamentary term. So how many plenary sitting days there were, the hours of sitting, how many votes in plenary, and for example, the amendments adopted, amendments rejected. So what do we have in terms of data? We have in the EU Open Data Portal, there are currently around 60 data sets in total. We also have further data which can be found on the European Parliament's website in the public register of documents. It's basically quite a big repository of references to documents which are either produced or received by the institution. And it dates back to the beginning of to the end of 2001. And later on in the presentation, I'll also show it, so you see what it is and how to access it. Regarding the formats of the data sets, I must say that unfortunately, for the moment at least, we do not have all formats available for each reference. Still, we do have data in machine-readable formats in XML, partly in Excel files. We also, we do have text and reference data, but then there are also possibilities for visualization, to have infographics and interactive maps. And I will show some of the examples in a minute. Then regarding the languages, the language depends on the data set, and I would say that most of the data is in English, but some of the documents are available also in other or in all EU languages. Now, moving to the next page, with I think our most, probably the most popular data set we currently have in the EU Open Data Portal is about the members of the European Parliament. It's sort of a high-level data set, I would say. It contains various information about them, the country they represent, the political group, the national political party. So if I go on the EU Open Data Portal, I hope you will see here now. So you kind of have the full list of members elected in 2019. You would also have them by alphabetically, by their letter or incoming, outgoing members. So I think, well, you basically clicking on the XML would bring you to the data set. If going on the website of the European Parliament, there is a bit of graphical presentation. So for example, if I go and pick here, I could take all the German members, and this information would also be downloadable in XML format. Then moving on, the next data set, the data set, it's about elections or electoral data, where we do have quite a lot in, I would say, so it is about, it contains information about European Parliament elections as well as national elections in the EU member states, and it is there for all European elections since 1979. So in general, this type of data is available in various formats for download. I'll do the same here. I click on the EU Open Data Portal to see what you see here. And then on our own website, you do have the different formats here. For example, for 2019, you would have them in JSON, in XML, CSV. You also have the historical data on European elections. And then, for example, as for the graphical presentation, you can find here under the European results, for example, the breakdown by national parties and political groups. And here the download, it's with the graphics you could download it, but at least you can see there are quite some interesting views to visualize the data related to elections. Then what else? We do have surveys, so Eurobarometer and Parliameter surveys. In this category, I think really most of the data we have is in PDF. Some of it is in Excel file. So it's basically surveys and field research on Europeans' attitudes, detailed post-electoral analysis. Also, it's kind of about monitoring changes in European public opinion. That's what else? It is, I mentioned in the beginning, the public register of documents. So basically for the finalized minutes of the parliamentary meetings in the website of the parliament, you do have quite a lot. So I'm currently just ending up directly on the search result for minutes, but how did I get there? So just to show you, if you know I went too far, if I click again, if I will have to start again from here. So basically under search, you do have an advanced search, and below in the document types, you can open it here. So there are quite some different categories. So for example, documents relating to parliamentary activity, there's a little plus here you can open. Then, for example, the plenary documents. In the plenary documents, you'll have the minutes. And then inside the minutes, for example, you have the finalized minutes, where I end up on the overview of the finalized minutes of the last plenary sitting, which took place in March. And opening this, a bit of more details here, should bring me to, so there is a PDF, I think there is a doc, and there are also XML files here. So if I click, this should show, yeah, this is what we have there. But you basically have here, through this view, if you browse through the document types, there is quite an amount of information there. We did also list here other data, like other information we have, but the formats are really, they're all in PDF, so probably limited use in the context of Datathon. Nevertheless, good to know that it exists. Now, just to mention the examples, couple of examples of external applications using DBpedia. So one of them is VoteWatch, providing an overview of policy positions, voting records, coalition formation trends of members of the European Parliament. And the other one is PowerTrack. We took just that you have the links and that you can see what is currently being done. And then we also looked back in the context of the EU Datathon and found out that actually during the Datathon 2017, one of the participants where they were using European Parliament's data, and the application and the website still exists, so WebWatch. So I think it's, we hope to have similar results this time. So thank you and good luck to all of you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ruth, for your presentation. I'm sure it will be very interesting, especially for the electoral data sheets that you can filter the different national parties and so on. Mm-hmm. So, well, I see that we don't have here any question for the time being. If not, we can just go back and ask you.
Yes, anytime, of course.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Ruth.
Thank you.
So now we go with our colleague from DG Grow from the European Commission, Mark Christopher Schmidt. So Mark Christopher, I give you the floor. You can start whenever you want.
Thank you very much, Emma. I just start to share my screen.
Okay, I will let you know when it works.
Okay.
Great.
So thank you very much to all of you to listen to what we are giving information on the open data challenges. We are working on Challenge 4, Europe Fit for the Digital Age. My name is Mark Christopher Schmidt. I work for DG Grow. And here we are in charge of electronic procurement, and we are very much interested in everything that deals with data on public procurement. The most important source that we have on the European Commission side is TED. TED stands for Tender Electronic Dailies. It is a website that I will show you in a second, where member states can publish all information, or where they have to publish all information about public procurements above a certain threshold. The next slide shows how we are retrieving the data. You see that the public buyers on the left-hand side, they have two ways to submit a notice to TED. The first one is via an e-sellers interface, that is a computer-to-computer interface. Most are using this one. And then the second one is that TED provides a tool manually, where public buyers can manually input the data for TED. And there you collect all the data, and we provide the data available on TED on the Open Data portal. And we can see that a lot of companies are actually reusing the data on TED. Some are human platforms all over Europe which collect the data to provide a service to the companies to find bids. But we can see that non-governmental organizations are reusing the data as well to analyze the data, for example, for corruption or collusion, for potential collusion, to see how transparent all the countries are. Before I go into, before I show the Open Data portal, we provide the data in several formats. We provide as well in real time, more or less, as XML, but probably the easiest way for you is to use the CSV files that we are providing, and I just to TED. So if you go to the EU Open Data portal, you see CSV subsets. These are the public procurement notices. And when you go down, you will see we are providing the data, the CSV files from 2006 on. The file for 2019 will be provided within the next days. I will show you the content now of the one of 2018. What is very important for you if you want to analyze this data is if you go to the documentation on the TED CSV data information. There, all the fields, the logic behind it will be explained to you. So I'm now going to show you the Excel file. I hope you can see it. If you don't see it, please point this out. So first you have the ID of the notice, then you have the URL to the notice, the year, the type. You will see which XML format is used. Here you can see who's the contracting authority, so the public buyer. You will see the address, the countries. You will see, because it's the public notice from the public buyers, you will find not any information in this one specific for on the suppliers. But I go back. just to show you something that you should take care of. If you use this data, this from 2018 has roughly 760,000 records. I expect that 2019 will be even much higher. I expect it to be, probably around 1 million entries. So it's a lot of data that you can play with. Important is column D, which is about the type. This is the type of the contract notices. And what you will see is that most of the notices will have version 2. 2 is the normal contract notice. And something that you should take care of as well is the XSD version. So the data on this record is based on the version 209. And probably when you analyze the data, you will find out that this 209, the data quality will be better than if you have notice from 208 or even before. Now, something that you should take care of as well is here you can see that it's always the same contracting authority. And if you look at the IDs, you will see it is the same ID. So what happened here is you have one contract notice, but this one contract notice is divided into several lots. And each lot will have its own lot. So that is something that you need to take care of if you look into the data. So much for the TED data. I will go back to the presentation. We have a second data set on EU Open Data Portal that is on eCertis. eCertis is a service that we provide as well. It is a service where the member states have to provide information how a company can fulfill a specific criteria. For example, how can they prove in a country, in Croatia, that a company has paid taxes? The tool itself, the link you will find in eCertis in the presentation. And I will just go quickly to this. So this is eCertis, the tool. And if you just click on this link and you click on, and you don't select anything else, and you click on export to Excel, it will export all the data available in eCertis into an Excel sheet. And here as well, I will show you how it looks like. This is how the data set looks like for eCertis. You have 3 worksheets. One is for the criteria that that the member states are providing. The issuing bodies, you can't read it, but if you export, you can see it yourself. And information about the actual evidence. So this is another data set that you can work with. I think from a practical point of view, or from an interesting point of view, especially the information on the TED data is, I think, very, very interesting, because it will show you a lot of insights on how public authorities are actually procured. I'll go back to the presentation. I'm done with my presentation. Do you have any questions?
Thank you very much, Mark Christopher, for your presentation. I don't know if we have any questions here.
I would have one question, if possible.
Yes, please.
Mark, the TED dataset and the eCertis dataset are rather complex. Is there any other documentation available for the participants to learn more about it?
For eCertis, we don't have, it's just, it's not very complex. On TED data, it is complex. But as I said, I will just share my screen again.
Mm-hmm.
go to, as I said, if you go to TED data information, and if you look into this, there you have very thorough documentation. Each field is described, what is in the data field, and the logic behind it. So I would really urge you to look into the CSV data information. That is for you the source to understand the data.
Okay, great, thanks, cool.
I ask something?
Yes, go ahead.
You mentioned at some point when you were showing the time series that the data sets improved in quality at some point in time.
Yes.
Would that mean that one would have problem combining them then, that they would need more cleaning up, or what do you recommend? If they wanted to combine, data that come from a previous period than when the quality got enhanced?
That is a very good question. It is a very difficult one to answer. First of all, the data is provided all in the same data format. So to have a possibility to compare the data. But you're right, the data quality has changed, especially from the latest version of the standard forms. Because a lot of information was made mandatory. Before that, a lot of information was optional. And we can really see this in the data quality. When I'm in contact with member states and showing how they perform, I actually just use 209, because if I would try to combine it with 208, I have a little bit more information that I need to show. But if I would combine it with 208, it would be rather unreliable. Therefore, I'm concentrating on version 209. So if you want, you should try to work with 209. You will see that as of 2018, most of the publications are done in 209. In 2019, it should be almost everything. If you go back to 2017, you will see that you have a lot of 208 or even 207. So, you need to really play with the data and see. The question is, what is the scope of your proposal? If you go into if you want to go far back in the time, you might need to do some cleaning yourself.
Okay, thank you. It was very useful. Yes.
Maybe one thing that is not really even into online, not really nice. What you can see here is the member states are obliged to provide a national ID if they have it, but currently still a lot of countries don't provide a national ID, and some of the countries, even if they have one, they don't provide it. This situation will improve, but only in 3 years from now, not now. That is another challenge.
Well, very interesting, Mark Christopher. I actually, my concern is that actually this information does not only work for one challenge, it can also work for example, challenge 2, an economy that works for the people.
Yes.
So somehow it can be combined with other challenges depending on how you see the opportunities here.
I would give the floor back then maybe to Inma. Inma, could you? The question was that the idea was to use the data from TED not only for challenge 4 but also for challenge 2. Is there a possibility for a proposal to say we want to use the procurement data but not for challenge 4 but for challenge 2? This is something that I cannot answer.
Yes, actually, No, there's no limitation actually in working with this data. The participants can apply with this data to any of the challenges they want. It's only that I'm just seeing now that it doesn't only fit for with challenge 4, it fits also for, I would say, for all the challenges actually. So it depends on how you see. I mean, somehow I'm just trying to invite participants to not to fit this information only for one challenge, but also like somehow use it for others because I think it can actually work very well with, for example, challenge 2. So
maybe something that I could propose to the participants. If you want to analyze the data and you're using a kind of an open source tool like Kibana, then it could be that even the member states would have interest just to take over the results from your proposal. So we have seen once in a challenge we had 2 years ago or 3 years ago, a company where they have used the data they have used a BI tool to analyze the data. It was very interesting to listen to them, but unfortunately it was based on a market product, which could not be just reused. So if you are analyzing data, and please do not forget, or please look into the possibility to use an open source tool like Kibana, so that you not only provide a result, but also that if a member state says, this is very interesting for us, we would like to take it over, that they can do this very simply.
Yes, indeed. I completely agree with Mark, Christopher. Yeah. So, okay, well, so there's nothing else from your side. Then, okay, only a remark. Next week on Thursday, 26th of March, we will have a presentation about the EU Open Data Portal and the TED portals. So in these portals, well. Martin, the floor is yours. You're muted, I think.
Sorry. Yeah, thanks for giving me the opportunity to present one data set of the European Patent Office. My name is Martin Kracker. I'm working in Vienna at the European Patent Office, and Vienna is responsible for publishing and disseminating patent information. First, I will give a short introduction. What is the European Patent Office and what is patent information? And then I will go to a data set called linked open EP data. And why did I choose this one? Because it's interesting for the challenge Europe in the digital age, because it's in a very special format, which is called linked data. So it's more for the techies, but it might be something which is really a future format for connecting different data sets. And that's what the challenge is all about. And the second point is that it's about patents, and which the European Patent Office just published the yearly report. And the patents in the area of digital communications are now the largest share of all patents and at the highest increase. So we got 19.6% more patents in digital communications than the year before. So first, a short introduction. What is a patent? A patent is actually a sort of contract between the inventor, who had a new idea, and the society. The society grants the inventor a monopoly, so he can exclusively sell, produce, use his invention for up to 20 years and can charge fees for other people who do that. On the other side, the inventor has the obligation to tell society how his invention works. So society can learn from that and build on top of that further ideas, so increasing innovation. And the European Patent Office as one patent authority is publishing that information. So how does patent information look like? What you see here is the first page of a patent document, which contains what we call bibliographic data. So it contains the title of the invention, so it's something about firefighting garment. It contains a short summary, the abstract. It contains information about who was the applicant, which company applied it, which persons have been the inventor, what has been the legal representatives, various dates when it has the invention, the patent application been filed, when was the patent published. It contains technical classifications. These are codes which tell in which technical area this invention is. I will give an example later. It contains links to other patents, to earlier filings which are somehow related. That's now getting too complex to explain in detail. It contains citations because one patent might be similar or than another patent or another what we call non-patent literature, another scientific paper, a book, or a YouTube video, whatever it can be. So what you see here on first page is the bibliographic data, and our data set contains bibliographic data only. On the following pages, it might be 10 more pages or 500 more pages of that patent publication, you will see detailed descriptions and you see drawings explaining the invention. What you see here is a short overview of the various data sets and online tools we have at the European Patent Office. We have information about European patents or worldwide patents, and they're available as online tools via APIs or as raw data products. And we will be talking about that raw data product, which is called linked open EP data. I also want to mention SPARQL. SPARQL is really the low-level entry tool to see a patent. Just Google it. It's an easy-to-use tool. It's and you can find some patents and play around and get an understanding what it is. So now I'm going to the product itself. Some first information. That's a data product which contains EP bibliographic data. So what's on the first page of the patent information, of the patent publication? It's usually it's lots of structured data, little text. It's contains all patents from number one, which has been published 1978 till now. So it's about 3.5 million inventions. And it also contains the CPC scheme. CPC is the largest and most comprehensive and newest technical classification scheme for patents. I will come to that in a minute. The format of the data, it's not HTML, it's not XML, it's not an Excel sheet, it's linked data. That's a very special format. I will explain it later. Some might know it as semantic web or RDF, resource description framework. It's rather something for the techies. It's complex. On the other side, it makes combining different data sets which have the same format much easier. License-wise, it's an open license. You can use it. You can do whatever you want. Just say that it's from the European Patent Office. We keep it updated weekly. Target user group are data scientists, and I think that's the audience who is now listening. And that's a rather new product. It's about 2 years old. And if you remember the URL at the bottom line, that's where you can find all information about that product. epo.org/linked-data. First, I mentioned pattern classification schemes. There are IPCs, the older one still in use, and CPC is a more modern one. CPC stands for Cooperative Pattern Classification. Why is it useful? Just imagine there are 5 inventions, all have more or less the same invention, but they call it differently. One calls it a bottle opener and the other one calls it a cork lifter. So it's quite difficult to see that this is actually something very similar. And that's why the coding comes into place, because text is ambiguous. So they all get the same code, and in the case of CPC, it's something like B67, B7. Might be anything. It helps you to simply retrieve patterns which are actually about the same thing. Another example, on the contrary, on the bottom you see 2 pictures. These are definitely 2 different things. They all are called the same, lift arrangement, by the patent applicants. Nevertheless, their CPC code is quite different because they are different. To show you how detailed that information is, we got here the CPC. It's a classification system based on a hierarchy. In total, there are 250,000 symbols or nodes in the hierarchy. So let's give an example. On the highest level, we might have only the code A, which means human necessity. But if you go further down, so the longer the code gets, the more detailed it gets. So A47 is about furnitures. Or here we got roasters or bread toasters with automatic ejection or timing means and a mechanical clockwork. So it's really very detailed, covers the complete domain, and this information is available freely in that dataset. Not only are all patterns assigned to one or more of these symbols, but the hierarchy of the symbols is included in the dataset. The next 2 slides I want to talk what is linked data. Linked data actually it's based on an idea from Tim Berners-Lee, the inventor of the internet as we know it now, and it's an old idea. It's 20 years old. It took 10 years to get it standardized by World Wide Web recommendations, but now it's all based on an open standard. There are tools available. It's nothing proprietary like the presenter before me said, Kibana. No, it's an open standard. So the basic idea is that first we identify all business objects in our domain. In our domain, the business object is the patent publication, the inventor, the technical classification code, the patent office. And all these objects get a globally unique identifier. And for example, here we got a patent application. And that application we give an identifier like this. So it's called datapedia.org/linkdata. So that's globally unique because only we can give that identifier. And then it's an ID of an application, of an EP publication. EP stands for European patent. And then it has a number. And actually this identifier looks like a URL as we know it. And it sometimes serves as a URL because if you take that identifier and put it in a browser, what you get information about this application and also how this application is related to other objects. Like this application might be related to this publication. To give a more concrete example, let's assume that we got here 2 business objects. One is a patent publication and the other one is a person, actually it's an inventor. So what do we know? We know this patent application has a certain number and it has been issued by a certain office, the European Patent Office. We know that this person has a name and is living in Holland. And we know that there's a relationship between these two because this person is the inventor of that idea represented by the publication. How would that look like now in our special format called linked data? In the linked data model, every piece of information, every simple fact is represented by 3 terms, like a short English sentence containing of a subject, a predicate, and an object. So the first sentence says actually this thing, this identifier, is a publication. It's not a car, it's not a house, it's not a person, it's a publication. And also we know that the same thing has a publication number 1 million, and the same thing has a publication authority, which is the European patent. Similar things we can tell for the person. He also has an identifier, whatever it is, and he is a person, he has a full name, Mr. Kosman, and his country code is NL for Netherlands. And how do we represent the fact that this person is an inventor of that publication? Well, quite simply, we just say this thing, which we know it's a publication of publication number 1 million, has an inventor of this ID, and of this ID we know it's a person, Mr. Kosman. So what we see here is a huge number of triples, because it contains only of 3 parts, subject, predicate, and object, and the combination of these things is the data. You can also visualize it as a graph. So, and each triple can be represented by one object connected to another object. For example, there's a symbolic publication, and this is a publication of that application. This application has been classified by a certain CPC code. And the CPC code on a hierarchy, the narrower and broader. Or that publication has an inventor, John Smith. So there's a triple publication, whatever it is, the ID, I don't care, has an inventor, and that's the ID of John Smith. John Smith is the inventor of 2 publications. Or we have citations. This publication cites an article in the International Journal of something. And not only can it refer to data within this object, it also can refer to data of remotely objects. What I see here, we got here a publication, a European publication, which has a priority, that's a special legal meaning, to a Korean application. I can do that because Korea also published their data as linked data. So it doesn't matter if I refer within a data set or just to a data set done by somebody else for a different reason without any coordination or standardization, because we're all using the same format. So going back to the data product, where will you find all the information? As mentioned before, the URL is epo.org/linkedData. You will find here a user guide and more documentation under further information. And you will see a link called Open, which goes to a small GUI application, which helps you to understand and to browse the data. That's how this small application looks like. Here's the main menu bar. What you see here is the API. The API allows you, if you enter one of these IDs we had before, for example, one which looked like this, then this browser will open, which explains that, which makes it more visual, the data structure, and it allows you to navigate through the data structure. For example, you see here that this ID is a publication, it has an abstract, you see here the abstract, it has a publication date, you see the date, and it has a title of invention, you see here 3 titles in German, English, and French. So, and you can, and if this is an object, in this case it's not, but this is an object, for example, the applicant, you can click on it and you're changing the focus and you're now seeing information about that applicant. This API can also be parameterized. You can filter, you can sort, you can retrieve it, the information as it's done here as HTML, but you can also retrieve it as JSON or other formats. All that is documented in the documentation page, which you also find here. Also very interesting is a menu item called SPARQL Point. SPARQL is the query language for retrieving linked datasets. You can run queries within your datasets, or you can even combine queries and fetch data from different datasets if these datasets allow it. This is called federated query. It's a very powerful language. You can do counting and aggregation and following these paths, but it's special. If you're familiar with it, it's great. Otherwise, the learning curve might be a little bit steep, but nevertheless, it's worth. And we provide some examples here, but we will provide more examples in the next, I think, 2 or 3 months. And there's also documentation which gives you examples which you can cut and paste. Whatever we have seen in these GUIs, remember the GUIs are just for helping you to understand the data. The real value is the data itself, which probably looks like this. So you could read it, but actually it's meant for machine processing. And to get the data, there's a download page where you can download all the 650 million triples. It's about 60 gigabytes of data. We update it weekly, but nevertheless, you can download it, and then the changes are minimal because it's only 1 week which is added in addition. So what are the benefits? The benefits are that it's a very special format, technically speaking, and it's nothing invented by the European Patent Office. It's standard. We are trying to using standard terminology. We've seen the Mr. Kosman, our example, he had something called FN, which stands for full name. Everybody in the community knows what FN means. So we're trying to use standards as much as possible. And the infrastructure you need, it's there, it's the internet. And all the rest is covered by a World Wide Web Consortium. So all the basic ideas, using this format helps you to reduce the effort when you're combining different data sets. And that's what actually the challenge is all about. You have to combine at least 2 data sets. And it's easier if you're combining 2 linked data sets than if you have to combine one XML data set with a CSV data set. To give you an idea of what can be done, last week we made public a small app, which it's not really an application. It just shows you the power of combining linked data sets. And we use 2 data sets. One is the EPO linked data set, which we just discovered, and the other one is DBpedia. DBpedia is actually Wikipedia, but converted into linked data. And how does this work? If you enter the URL epolod.org, then you see a very small search screen, so you can retrieve some patents by entering an applicant, you can enter a research institute or a larger company, and some keyword which should appear in the patent, and a range, a time range if you want to, and then you click on search and you will find a list of patent applications. Here we got 7 publications. That's the number. It has been published 2012, and that's the title. If you select then in the next step one of these publications, then you see more information about that publication. So again, publication number, publication year. It has been filed because the idea is older than the publication in 2011. That's the application. You see titles in 3 languages and the abstract. And what we also did, and that's the innovative part actually, that we used all terms in the abstract and checked whether these terms appear as an entry in the DBpedia encyclopedia. And these terms are here under related to. Actually, it's mostly technical terms. So if you're now going to one of these terms, and let's try laser, then you see what DBpedia knows about the entry laser. And for most terms, here we got the term laser. For most terms, you will find an explanation or a definition. You will very often find an image, and then a varied list which of more information. And that really depends. Sometimes for strange keywords, it's nothing is here. Sometimes it's a lot. And then, of course, as it is for an encyclopedia, you can select any of the other entries, like, I don't know, who is Andrius Wojtuszka. Obviously, he's working in the field of laser. If I want to know more about him, I can click on it. So, but that's tried an application combining EP pattern data and DBpedia. Because if I know, for example, I don't know what terahertz means, like in our example here, then I can simply go to DBpedia for advice. Pattern data can be combined with lots of data which are already out there. Just to give you an idea, court decisions, I mentioned ECLI, the European Case Law Identifier. You can combine the with dictionaries, we did it, geographical records, company register, referencing scientific papers, whatever. That's just a brainstorming chart, and whatever you fancy, it might work. What you see here is what is called the Linked Data Cloud as it was of 2019. The Linked Data Cloud is actually a chart, a visualization of all known or recorded linked data sets which are publicly available. Every bubble here represents one data set. DBpedia represents probably the one here right in the middle. EPO is one bubble here, and the lines tell you how they are already linked. That's just to give you an idea how much of linked data is actually out there. Nevertheless, you have to search for it. So what can you do? Just some ideas. It's not very creative. We already showed you our demo app, epolod.org. But I can imagine that I find code is very interesting, which is, to my knowledge, not a linked data format, but nevertheless, you could combine patterns and EU projects. So which EU projects have some trigger the creation of some patterns? Or scientific literature, the publishing house Springer Nature published all their bibliographic data for free as linked data. That's my knowledge. You can combine it with environmental data, whatever you think makes sense. Visualization, of course, is possible. Doing some analysis, if you fancy. An interesting area is using AI and some referencing machines on linked data, following links. That's the last slide. Here's some resources in general about pattern information, because understand pattern information is not easy, but actually there's a learning course which tells you what is pattern information. Here you see a link to all of our pattern information products. If you need more information, you will find it here. We have discussion forums with a human help desk, and for linked open EP data, you will find documentation. We had last week a webinar recording of 1 hour, which you can see. And in any case, you can contact us, and we are happy to help and guide you through and give you tips. So in the top right corner, that's my email address. So that was my part, and yeah, I'm happy to hear your questions.
Thank you, Martin. I would have right away a question. You mentioned a lot of great ways to access the data, and I think it's also remarkable that you offer so many APIs and ways to access them automatically. What would be the preferred ways? Would you say people should use the SPARQL endpoint, should use the bulk download, or what would you recommend?
I think if what you've seen, the SPARQL endpoint and the API is meant for experimental purposes. So if you're making a prototype, if you're just making a showcase, you're happy to use it. If you want to make heavy use of it, or if you want to combine it with different data sets, it's probably more convenient to take both data sets and load it locally in your triple store, in your database. So that's why we have the function to download the data. You can download the data, you can simply import it. Importing it's easy because it's simply triples. And if you do it with another linked data set, you can both put it in the same database, and then you are free to do anything. SPARQL queries, combining, adding, creating more connections. That's actually, if it's possible, that's the way to go. There are even free triple stores out there which are not bad. So if anybody's interested, at least I know have some experiences with one of them, I can share that if I'm contacted by email.
Great, thank you, Martin. We received another question from John, and he's asking, okay, you have so much data, what would you like to do with it, or what would be like your dream application?
It's difficult to say because internally for the EPO we are using our data to the highest degree possible. But we're not really targeting the patent community. We believe that our data is useful outside of the patent community as well. So actually I'm relying on your ideas to do something which we never would have thought about it, because it's not the business of the patent office. So actually I don't have great ideas. So that's why it's great to have the Datathon and to have a larger community and a larger pool of people with great ideas.
So John has another question. John, is it okay if I unmute you?
Hi Martin, thank you very much for your presentation. So my general question is this. For me, I am a data scientist, so usually clients come to me and say, I have these data sets and I have this problem, can you find me a solution? What is the problem that you're trying to solve? Do you have so much data that you don't know how to search it properly? Do you want people to learn that you have this data and use it? So what is your actual problem that you're trying to solve?
I don't think we're looking for search applications, because we have our own search applications. We have research teams working on that. That's not the point. We also have projects to automatically classify the patents. Our goal is actually to make our data available to other people, so other people can make use of it, and we spur innovation or do something good for society on that. It's not the Datathon for us. It's not something to solve our problems. On the contrary, we want to offer our data so other people benefit from it.
John,
may I add? This is Roland speaking from the European Patent Office as well. May I say something?
Sure, please.
Yeah, basically, to add to what Martin said, is that most of our data sets which are used are known and used in the patent information community. So a lot of our usual users, they know what kind of formats we offer and what they can do with it. And of course, there's a lot of service around that in order to explain how to do proper searches, prior art searches, and freedom to operate searches, and so on. So this is a community which knows the systems and of course they always learn. But the challenge for us is here that it's basically our data, which is also used in other contexts, but it is offered in a format which is normally not used within the patent community, but it's rather an offer to people outside the patent community or patent information community to make something useful out of it. And that's basically, we're stepping outside the normal sphere of our users. And that's why on the one hand, we don't have a concrete problem to solve. It's rather that we offer a service, say, okay, here's great data, maybe in a different format, maybe you want to combine it, and that's for us the big advantage with it. It's made to be combined with other sets, and this demo app we developed is just to try to make a first step to show what you can do. And I'm sure that a lot of creative people outside, they have other ideas how they can use it in a different context. And that's for us the nice thing to see if it's there any use in a different context other than patent searching, basically.
Great, thank you, Roland. John has another question. Do your clients have a similarity search functionality or duplicate patent discovery? Similarity
yes.
search functionality or duplicate patent discovery?
Well,
Yes, I think that's standard feature of the search, because usually you have to have an idea, patent application. Our examiner have to find whether this idea already exists. So you're checking whether earlier, similar or same applications exist. Also, I did not mention patent families. Patent families are a group of families, a group of patents which actually are based on the same idea. The reason why it's necessary, because if you want to have a patent in, let's say, UK, Germany and France, you have to have 3 patents. Even so, the same idea, you have to file a patent for all 3 countries. But of course, the patent offices know that this is actually the same idea. So they're combined by belong to a single family. So the similarity, on a very close similarity, actually is defined.
And may I add as well, you're quite right. There are a lot of ways to find similar patents which are related via priorities or families or via citations. But this is based on bibliographic data, and I'm not sure, John, whether you're more in asking in the direction of semantic searching. You have to differentiate. We don't have any tools available for the outside users, for the community to use that. We do have the examiners internal have very sophisticated tools where there is some functionality, but for the outside world, we don't have this at the moment.
Just if you are into text, because you mentioned similarity, and similarity is usually based on text, we also have a data set which is called EP Full Text Data for Text Analytics. Have a look at the webinar number 2 or the challenge number 2 where we presented this one.
Great. Thanks for all the answers. Well, what I think also, as we do this together with the DG Regio of the European Commission, it's very nice to also analyze, okay, how many patents do we have on regional level? And then we can do this link. Or what was our big idea in the beginning when we started this cooperation, to say, okay, we have a lot of funding from member states, from the EU, from different regions, but what happens in the end? Can we create patents? Can we create new products, innovation for Europe? And I think that's a very interesting challenge for the people to use exactly this linked data and create something out of it, to show, okay, it's valuable to invest in these areas because we can create new patents, new products, or maybe it's not so valuable for other areas and we should refocus. And I think those are questions which could really benefit the whole society. And with that, if there are no other questions, I would like to thank everyone for joining our webinar, especially the presenters for taking their time and presenting everything. And I would say stay healthy and please submit your proposal until 3rd of May. And we have another webinar next week. And see you then. Goodbye.